Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I give my greetings to my beloved son Ahmad James, Baraka Blue, and to all of those of you who have the honor and the blessing to be studying with him. May you take from him many, many gifts. He has many gifts to offer. I wouldn't want to compare our brother Ahmad James with anyone. I hope that he will be one of the greatest poets that the English language has ever produced. John Milton, in Paradise Lost, believed that he could do better than Virgil in the Aeneid, even though he learns most of his poetic skills from Virgil. And that's because of the fact that Virgil was a pagan and John Milton was a Christian. John Milton, by the way, was a Puritan Christian, a Calvinist, who then became an Arian, a follower of Arius, who didn't believe in the deity of Christ, and then he became a Unitarian, which is even closer to us than the Arians. Perhaps when Milton died, he was one of us. In any case, poetry is one of the great gifts. And in Arabic, we call the poet the sha'ir, which means that he is the one who can feel. He is the one who can empathize. He is the one who has sympathy, or she, and can express that feeling. And this feeling takes him beyond discursive language into the realm of poetry that tells us and that taps into metaphysical realities that can never really be put into words. If we go back to Frost, who I would say is similar to Ahmad James, Frost's poetry can be easily understood. Sidi Ahmad James can also be easily understood. Frost, who writes beautiful poetry, would often hear when people commented on the depth of what he had said, that I didn't know I had said that, although I don't deny it. And this is because the poet has the ability to tap into realities that are bigger than him. We say of the Arif that what he says, that he is above what he says. And we say of the scholar that he is below what he says. And perhaps in the case of certain poets, that would also be true, because their language takes them to a realm which may be above them. And in the case of the great poets who are arifs, like Ibn Arabi, Ibn Farid, like Rumi, and others, then probably it's true that what they say is below them. They are above it, because they understand more than they can actually put into words. Beauty is the splendor of truth, and it is the responsibility of the poet to bring beauty to our lives that guides us to the truth, and that makes the truth accessible to us, that pulls us to the truth. And this is that truth of the great metaphysical realm, which the poet taps into, and which, if he is a Muslim who's given the right training, should be able also to understand. If you look at the great Javanese poets of Nusantara, especially those who belong to the Nine Saints, their poetry is beyond words. And in Javanese, beautiful Javanese, it taps into realities about God and about the world and about love that are very difficult to put into discursive language. One of our scholars who studied the great metaphysical scholars of Islam for decades, he once went in Pakistan to visit one of the saints whose tomb was outside of Lahore, I believe it was Lahore, and he stayed there for a long time. This is many years ago. And when he came out at nighttime, then there were no cars, there were no taxis. He wondered, how in the world will I get back to my hotel? And out of the dark came a cart driver. They have these carts with two wheels in Pakistan and India that are very famous. And he said that looking at the man, the clothing that he was wearing, you could buy in the market for about $1. He was a very poor man. And he said to the man in Persian, because he didn't know Urdu, but he did know Persian, He said, "Could you take me to the hotel?" The man responded in Urdu that he could. Urdu and Persian are very similar, by the way. And then when he got on the cart next to the cart driver recited to him from Persian, from Rumi and Hafiz, all the way to the hotel for about 40 minutes. He said, "I learned more about metaphysics in that 40 minutes than I learned for 3 decades. So the poet is the great facilitator. The poet is the great guide. And the poet has a role in civilization and culture that no one else has. We need poets. We need poetry." And the Egyptians would speak of their language, which, by the way, ancient Egyptian is very close to Arabic. They belong to the same big family, and the structures of the language are very similar. And they used to say that our words are the words of God. The words of our language are the words of God. Medu, netar. And they used to say that our language is sounds filled with deeds. So this is what you want your poetry to be also. Sounds filled with deeds. And this is why also to be a great poet, you must do what you talk about. What you talk about must be you. And you can't call people to something and fail to do it. And this is why the great crime of the poets, whenever they commit this crime, which they don't always do, and they don't at all do in the case of great poets, is that they say something great, but they don't do it. So your words have got to be sounds filled with deeds, and you have to do those deeds. And there is nothing greater than to praise the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All creation praises him. His light is stamped on everything. He is the essential light. He is the first of creation. His light and his spirit are the first thing that God created. And the greater cannot come from the lesser. The first moment of creation is the greatest moment of all. And that's when God put together the light of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which then manifests itself in everything in the created world. So we don't deify the Prophet, but anything less than deification of him is valid because he is the greatest of all created beings. One of the paradoxes of history, although it's not really that paradoxical, it is what we call epistemic warfare. Epistemological warfare, the purpose of which is to destroy other people's traditions and to make them sterile and to assert that they cannot produce knowledge and they cannot be relevant in our time, is that the Western world, as a rule, looks upon our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with not a very pleasing image. Also Arius, whom we referred to indirectly, who was one of the last defenders of the humanity as opposed to the deity of Jesus Christ, they also look upon him with very evil eyes until quite recently. But it's really strange that in the Eastern world, and especially in the Muslim world, but this goes also, for much of the world at large, Hindu, Buddhist, Confucianist, and Taoist, that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is seen as one of the greatest boons that was ever given humanity. And in the West, there's always this question mark about him and this suspicion and doubt about him. And that's why praising the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and humanizing the Prophet in the English language in particular, as well as in French and German and Spanish and Portuguese and other Western languages, is really important so that we overcome this legacy of epistemic warfare and we give back to the people the true image of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May you all be able to do that. I presume that many of you are from Nusantara and tap into the incredible tradition of poetry that you have there, especially in the great Javanese poets and the 9 saints. And you become people who pick up that banner and take it not into epistemic warfare, but into the epistemic truce that enables all people to speak the truth that they know to be real. Ameen. God bless you all. Keep me in your prayers. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.